Are you managing boomers in the workplace? It can be like teaching your parents how to use emojis, but totally worth it if you can actually get past that part in terms of teaching the technology. Let's explore best practices. Just stay with me for a minute. Hello, I'm Eugene with the Dilan Consulting Group, and today I want to talk to you about baby boomers in the workplace. There's a lot to share. These are the folks that brought us rock and roll and the folks who landed somebody on the moon. And honestly, they have been through a lot. They have a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But I want to start with the idea of how the experiences that each of us goes through in our formative years, I think kind of sets the stage for how we show up in the workplace. So I want to give you a little bit of a background, a little bit of history in terms of the baby boomers. So I've already mentioned the moon landing, and I can tell you from personal experience, living through that what that instilled in me, as well as some of the other things that I lived through during that period, is a sense of optimism. In fact, there's some research that tells us that baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964 were actually found to be the most optimistic generation. Their average optimism on the index score was 7.1 out of 10. And what was interesting also was that just 9% of baby boomers said that little daily annoyances actually get under their skin. And that's compared with 34% of Gen Z, which are born between 1997 and 2012. Now that comes from Newsweek. Now, the point that I'm trying to make again is that the things that you experience growing up kind of set the stage in terms of how you show up in the workplace. And for that reason, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that the baby boomers went through. There was a period of prosperity. World War II was just ending. There was economic growth going on. There was some sense of stability, but hold on, because a lot more happened. There was the civil rights movement, which again was really, really tough, but also brought, I think, a sense of optimism in terms of creating a better world, in terms of creating a better America, at least. And then, of course, we had the Vietnam War, and that brought a lot of internal angst here, a lot of protests, and there was a huge anti-protest movement, which actually, I think in a lot of ways, kind of led to the counterculture at Woodstock, and a lot of music and social revolution of the 1960s, and people were letting their hair down literally and figuratively. And of course, television kind of came to the fold, and that had a huge impact. At least it did on me. I can remember watching TV and having this sense that there was a naiveness to everything on television that in a lot of ways can kind of set you up, because you can begin to think, if you're not mindful, that that's what real life is like. And of course it isn't. And again, I've already mentioned the moon landing. And then of course the Cold War. I can remember being told to, get on my knees and get under the desk. These were the nuclear drills, as if that was going to do anything to save me. But I cannot say enough about how, when you experience all of these things, it can actually have an impact on your mindset and the way that you approach the world and the way that you work. And so where I want to go next is to talk a little bit about the things that I think resulted from that kind of being raised in that kind of an environment. For starters, there's a strong work ethic in baby boomers. And, what I can say is, as being the child of my parents immigrated from Puerto Rico, so I'm kind of first generation born and raised here. But work ethic was like, it's how people judged you. And to this day, I think, and I think about myself and I think about others who are in my age group. And it really is something that we're proud of. The way that we show up, and we're dedicated and we commit and we're willing to put in the hours as needed. Although admittedly, I've learned a little bit from the younger generations around having a little bit more work-life balance. There's also a loyalty. I can remember, people would go to a job and there was an expectation. I mean, of course, there were pensions then and golden handshakes that don't exist anymore, but there was a sense of loyalty. There was a sense that your company would take care of you. People valued job security, and we trusted our employers. And what's funny about that is that in my own career, there was a period when I would jump every year and a half, and I can remember people looking at my resume in judgment. Like, you're going to have to do some explaining around why it is that you would leave. And, fast forward to now, when if you stay in a place for more than 2 or 3 years, people look at you like your skills have gone stale because you've been in the same place, and so that has really changed in terms of the loyalty to employers and the positions that you're in, and also in those days I would say that the leadership was a little bit more top down. I can remember being afraid of some of my managers and wanting to impress them and things of that sort, and so there was structure, there was hierarchy. There was policies and procedures, and people really kind of relied on those and expected you to follow them, which is not necessarily the way that you innovate, not necessarily the way that we operate today. Yes, you have to have policies and procedures, but you also have to be willing to push against those, I think, in order to get to innovation, in order to get to new ideas. And then, of course, there's the technology communication versus face-to-face. And, I text message and I Insta message and I use Slack, but I have to say it didn't come naturally. I had to put in some effort, and I still struggle at times. I'll be looking at the screen and I can't find a particular button. But I've learned and I've come a long way, but I still believe that face-to-face is ultimately a game changer. And as a clinical psychologist, especially when something has an emotionally laden side to it, or if the stakes are high, that it can be more helpful to be sitting with someone because you can read all the cues. But what I'm really saying is that for the baby boomers, this is still to some degree their preferred way of communicating, and so that's something to keep in mind. And then lastly, as I said before, the history of everything they have been through and the ups and downs economically, the ups and downs of political and global stability, and so I think that means that they bring, the baby boomers, we bring a lot of ideas and expertise, and we have to be careful not to just get rid of that and close the door to that. I have to say that I have a lot of friends who reached 50 and were exited, and I think most of that being driven by economics. You can find someone younger and pay them less. Some of that probably also having to do with technology and wanting digital natives. But I do think it's a mistake to go too far down that road, because there is a lot of expertise and knowledge that I think people in my age group and older want to contribute. We still want to be contributing and want to be relevant. So with that, I'm going to jump in to giving you some pointers around how to manage and lead the baby boomers in the workplace. And I think I want to start with the idea of appreciation and somehow acknowledging, if you think about growing up in an environment that was hierarchical, and now we work in an environment that, there's some organizations who even tried holacracy, and they tried all these other things to make it more egalitarian. But if you can find a way to appreciate that experience without being hierarchical, I think that'll go a long way. And one of the ways to do that is to, set up mentoring, and it could be a peer mentoring. I mean, you could have younger people mentoring people who are older on technology, but you could have older people mentoring younger people in terms of work ethic and how you communicate and organizational culture and processes and systems and things of that sort. So it could be a mutual thing there. The other way I think you can kind of show appreciation for experience is to ask for advice. One of the biggest compliments you can give someone is to say, hey, I'm thinking about A, B, C, and D. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. That's different than saying I want you to make the decision, but just I think including them and asking them for their opinions can go a long way in terms of helping them to feel valued and respected. And again, that in my mind increases engagement and productivity. The other thing is communication. Find ways to communicate clearly and directly. I think that back when I was, young in the workplace, things were very direct. I think, and not always respectful. And I'm a huge advocate of respectful. So I think we need to be direct, but we need to find a way to do it respectfully. And so just keeping in mind that preference for face-to-face, especially if you think that the someone's going to have a reaction to it, just kind of being there so you can gauge and I think acknowledge what it is that they're reacting to. And I also think plain talk, cutting out some of the jargon, because I do think that jargon can feel unpersonal, and so speaking in plain English, I think, can go a long way in terms of relating to boomers. And I've already spoken a little bit about structure, but making sure that roles are clear. And I understand in startups that's not always the case, and not ideal either, because you have to wear the different hats so nothing falls through the cracks. But it is important, I think, to try and, as best you can, define what the roles are going to be. And along those lines, to think about career development for baby boomers, whether it's, a webinar, or whether it's sending them to some leadership training, or sending them to some training around how to improve their technical skills. Boomers want to contribute. I think those of us of a certain age are not ready to go to pasture. One example of that is my father-in-law. He owns a little engineering company, and he's 88, and he goes to work every day. He rides his bicycle. I think it's one of those things that keeping him, I think, engaged is actually keeping him healthy, both mentally as well as physically. So I think it's very important to think about development and engagement. And then I'm going to move on to flexibility. Flexibility is something that we didn't grow up with, but that we very much appreciate. And again, as I said, we've learned a lot from the younger generations, and I think it's important to recognize that remote work is no longer something that was just because of COVID. I think that for a lot of people, it was a big aha moment of, wow, we can be incredibly productive while working from home. And while it's not always the best scenario, I think it needs to be case by case, and it also needs to be situational, because some situations do require people to come together. I think, but maybe again, I'm giving myself away as a boomer, but I think flexibility is key. And along those lines, I think we need to think about how do we offer phased retirement options to people. So this how, again, they can stay, they can continue to contribute, they can stay relevant, and feel like they're connected. But at the same time, I think that the upside of that is that you're not losing all of that institutional knowledge. You're not sending it out the door and hoping that some people will be able to pick up the mantle, because they may or may not. And so phased retirement, I think, is a win-win. And then lastly, again, I'm going to come back to the idea of appreciation, but this time talk about recognition and how important it is that we take the time to give recognition to baby boomers. And, unlike other generations, they may be more comfortable with public recognition, although I have a whole talk on how all of us are really different around that. But in general, public recognition can go a long way, again, because you're acknowledging that they have all this experience and expertise. So with that, I hope you've learned a lot about the baby boomers. We're putting out a series. There'll be other talks like this. There will be blogs. There will be some posts. The goal is to get people talking, I think, because as we begin to talk and demystify I think the things that we have in common, as well as the things that we do differently, I think we build a bridge to working together more effectively. So with that, I thank you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.